The tragic love story of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy written by William Shakespeare at the beginning of his career about the romantic love between two young Italians from feuding families. It is one of Shakespeare's most famous plays throughout his lifetime, and, along with Hamlet, is one of his most frequently performed works. Today, the titular characters are regarded as archetypal young lovers. Romeo and Juliet belongs to the tradition of tragic love stories that dates back to ancient times. The plot is based on an Italian tale written by Matteo Bandello, which was translated into verse by Arthur Brooke under the title The Tragical History of Romeo and Juliet in 1562, and retold in prose by William Paynter in Palace of Pleasure in 1567. Shakespeare borrowed heavily from both sources but expanded the plot by developing several supporting characters, particularly Mercutio and Paris. The feuding families. In the vibrant city of Verona, two powerful families, the Montagues and the Capulets, are locked in a bitter feud. Their rivalry is infamous, marked by public brawls and deep-seated hatred. The streets are filled with whispers of their animosity, and the townspeople watch with bated breath as tensions rise. Lord Montague and Lord Capulet, the patriarchs of their respective clans, lead the charge in this centuries-old conflict. Their families have been at odds for generations, with no one quite remembering how or why the feud began. What was once a petty squabble has now escalated into an all-out war, with both sides unwilling to back down. The Montagues are known for their fiery tempers and impulsive nature, while the Capulets are renowned for their cunning and strategic thinking. This clash of personalities only serves to fuel the flames of discord between them. Whenever the two families cross paths, it's like watching a powder keg about to explode. Despite the constant threat of violence, life in Verona continues as normal. The townspeople have learned to navigate the treacherous streets, avoiding the Montagues and Capulets whenever possible. They whisper prayers for peace, hoping that one day, the feud will finally come to an end. A chance encounter at a grand Capulet ball, masked guests dance under the flickering candlelight. Romeo Montague, disguised among the revelers, catches sight of Juliet Capulet across the room. Their eyes lock, and in that moment, the world fades away. They are drawn to each other, like moths to a flame. Romeo, the only son of Lord Montague, has always been a dreamer. He spends his days lost in poetry and music, his head in the clouds. The constant fighting between his family and the Capulets has left him disillusioned and yearning for something more. As he enters the Capulet estate, his heart pounds with a mixture of excitement and fear. He knows that he shouldn't be here, that his very presence could spark a riot. But there's something about the allure of the forbidden that draws him in. Juliet, the only daughter of Lord Capulet, is the belle of the ball. She moves gracefully through the crowd, her beauty captivating all who lay eyes upon her. But beneath her radiant smile lies a heart that longs for adventure and escape. When Romeo and Juliet's gazes meet, it's as if the world stops spinning. Time slows to a crawl as they drink in each other's features, mesmerized by the intensity of their connection. In that moment, they forget about the feud, about the consequences of their actions. All that matters is the electricity that crackles between them. As they approach one another, their hearts race. Romeo takes Juliet's hand and whispers sweet nothings, while Juliet blushes, enchanted by his charm. They share a kiss that seals their fates, two star-crossed lovers unaware of the chaos their love will unleash. Love at first sight. In the aftermath of their stolen kiss, Romeo and Juliet find themselves lost in a whirlwind of emotions. Their hearts are filled with a love so pure and intense that it threatens to consume them both. Juliet, ever the pragmatist, is the first to come to her senses. She realizes the gravity of their situation, the danger they face if their families were to discover their forbidden love. But even as she tries to push Romeo away, her heart betrays her. Romeo, on the other hand, is lost in the euphoria of his newfound love. He's never felt this way before, and the thought of losing Juliet fills him with a sense of dread. He vows to do whatever it takes to be with her, even if it means defying his family's wishes. As the night wears on, the two young lovers find themselves drawn to each other again and again. They steal moments of solace in quiet corners, whispering promises of eternal love and devotion. Juliet marvels at Romeo's poetic words, while Romeo is captivated by the fire in Juliet's eyes. When the ball finally comes to an end, they reluctantly part ways. But their hearts remain intertwined, bound by a love that knows no bounds. As they lie awake in their respective beds, they dream of a future where they can be together without fear or consequence. Little do they know that their love is about to be put to the ultimate test: the secret wedding. With the help of Friar Lawrence, who hopes to end the feud through their union, Romeo and Juliet secretly marry the next day. Their vows echo in the chapel as they pledge their love for eternity, blissfully ignorant of the storm brewing outside. Friar Lawrence, a wise and compassionate man, has long been troubled by the Montague-Capulet feud. He sees Romeo and Juliet's love as a chance to finally bring peace to Verona. If he can unite the two families through marriage, perhaps they will finally see the error of their ways and put an end to the senseless violence. When Romeo and Juliet approach him with their plan, he is hesitant at first. He knows the risks involved, the danger they face if their families were to discover the truth. But as he listens to their pleas, he sees the depth of their love and the sincerity in their hearts. He decides to take a chance, to gamble everything on the hope that their union will bring about a new era of peace and understanding. The ceremony is a simple affair, with only Friar Lawrence and a few trusted witnesses present. Romeo and Juliet exchange vows in hushed whispers, their hands trembling with a mixture of excitement and fear. They seal their union with a kiss, their hearts swelling with the knowledge that they are now bound together for eternity. As they emerge from the chapel, they are filled with a sense of hope and optimism. They believe that their love can conquer all, even the centuries-old feud that divides their families. Little do they know that the road ahead will be fraught with challenges and heartbreak. A fatal duel. Tybalt, Juliet's fiery cousin, discovers Romeo's presence at the ball and seeks revenge. In a heated confrontation, Mercutio, Romeo's friend, steps in to defend him but is fatally wounded. Enraged by his friend's death, Romeo confronts Tybalt and kills him in a fit of rage. Tybalt, known as the Prince of Cats for his agility and cunning, is a force to be reckoned with. He is fiercely loyal to his family and will stop at nothing to defend their honor. When he learns of Romeo's presence at the Capulet ball, he is consumed by a burning desire for vengeance. Mercutio, a close friend of Romeo's and a member of the Montague clan, is a wild card in the feud. He is known for his quick wit and sharp tongue, and he has little patience for the endless cycle of violence that plagues Verona. When he sees Tybalt confronting Romeo, he steps in without hesitation, determined to put an end to the fighting once and for all. The confrontation quickly escalates into a deadly duel, with both men trading blows and insults. Mercutio, despite his best efforts, is no match for Tybalt's skill and cunning. He is mortally wounded, his life slipping away as he curses both the Montagues and the Capulets for their foolishness. Romeo, devastated by the loss of his friend, is consumed by a rage he has never known before. He rushes at Tybalt, his sword flashing in the sunlight. The two men engage in a fierce battle, their blades clashing and their bodies colliding. In the end, Romeo emerges victorious, but at a terrible cost. As Tybalt lies dying on the cobblestone streets of Verona, Romeo realizes the gravity of what he has done. He has broken the law, defied his family's wishes, and brought even more pain and suffering to the city he loves. He knows that he must flee, that he cannot stay and face the consequences of his actions. Banishment. The Prince of Verona arrives to find chaos in the streets. He banishes Romeo from Verona for avenging Mercutio's death. Heartbroken and desperate, Romeo flees to Mantua while Juliet is left to grapple with her family's wrath. Prince Aeschylus, the ruler of Verona, is a man of justice and order. He has long been troubled by the Montague-Capulet feud, and he has tried time and time again to put an end to the violence. But his efforts have been in vain, and now, with the death of Mercutio, he knows that he must take drastic action. When he arrives on the scene, he finds Romeo standing over Tybalt's lifeless body, his sword still drawn. He listens to the accounts of the witnesses, and he knows that Romeo acted in a fit of rage and grief. But the law is clear. Any man who sheds another's blood must pay the ultimate price. With a heavy heart, Prince Aeschylus sentences Romeo to banishment. He tells him that he must leave Verona immediately, that he cannot set foot in the city again under pain of death. Romeo pleads for mercy, begging the prince to spare his life, but his pleas fall on deaf ears. As Romeo flees the city, his heart is filled with a sense of despair and hopelessness. He knows that he will never see Juliet again, that their love is doomed to end in tragedy. He curses the feud that has torn his life apart, the hatred that has robbed him of his future. Juliet, meanwhile, is left to grapple with the aftermath of Romeo's actions. She is torn between her love for him and her loyalty to her family. She knows that she must keep their marriage a secret, that revealing the truth would only bring more pain and suffering to those she loves. As she watches Romeo disappear into the night, she vows to find a way to be with him, no matter the cost. She knows that their love is worth fighting for, that it is the only thing that can heal the wounds of the past and bring peace to Verona. A desperate plan. Juliet learns of her impending marriage to Paris and feels trapped. In a moment of desperation, she seeks Friar Lawrence's help once more. He devises a plan for her to fake her death using a sleeping potion that will make her appear lifeless for 42 hours. Juliet, torn between her love for Romeo and her duty to her family, finds herself in an impossible situation. Her father, Lord Capulet, has arranged for her to marry Paris, a wealthy and influential nobleman. Juliet knows that she cannot go through with the marriage, that her heart belongs to Romeo and Romeo alone. In a moment of desperation, she turns to Friar Lawrence, the only person who knows the truth about her secret marriage. She begs him for help, pleading with him to find a way to reunite her with Romeo. Friar Lawrence, ever the compassionate soul, listens to her pleas and begins to formulate a plan. He tells Juliet of a rare sleeping potion that will make her appear lifeless for 42 hours. During that time, he will send word to Romeo, who is in exile in Mantua, to come and rescue her. Once she awakens, she and Romeo will flee Verona and start a new life together, far from the reach of their feuding families. Juliet, despite her fear and uncertainty, agrees to the plan. She knows that it is a risk, that there is a chance that something could go wrong. But she also knows that it is her only hope of being with Romeo again. She drinks the potion, her body growing cold and still as the effects take hold. As Juliet lies in her bed, seemingly lifeless, Friar Lawrence sends a trusted messenger to Mantua with the news of her death. He instructs the messenger to find Romeo and deliver the message, urging him to return to Verona as soon as possible. But unbeknownst to Friar Lawrence and Juliet, the messenger never reaches Mantua. A plague has swept through the city, and all travel in and out of Verona has been halted. The message never reaches Romeo, and the plan begins to unravel. The tragic miscommunication. As Juliet lies in a death-like slumber, Friar Lawrence sends word to Romeo about their plan. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, a plague outbreak, Romeo never receives the message. Instead, he hears only that Juliet is dead. In Mantua, Romeo is living in exile, his heart heavy with the weight of his actions. He knows that he can never return to Verona, that he must live out the rest of his days in a strange and unfamiliar place. But his love for Juliet burns brighter than ever, and he longs for the day when they can be reunited. One day, as he walks the streets of Mantua, he is approached by a servant bearing news from Verona. The servant tells him that Juliet has died, that she has succumbed to a mysterious illness. Romeo's world crumbles around him, his heart shattering into a million pieces. He rushes to the nearest apothecary, his mind racing with thoughts of revenge and despair. He buys a vial of deadly poison, determined to end his life and join Juliet in the afterlife. He knows that it is a rash and foolish decision, but in his grief, he cannot see any other way. As Romeo races back to Verona, he is unaware of the truth, that Juliet is not truly dead, but rather in a deep slumber, brought on by Friar Lawrence's potion. He does not know that the message he received was false, that the messenger never made it to Mantua due to the plague. In his mind, he is returning to Verona to say a final goodbye to his beloved, to lay her to rest with his own hands. He does not know that he is walking straight into a tragedy of epic proportions, one that will shake the very foundations of Verona and change the course of history forever. Heartbreak in Mantua. Devastated by the news of Juliet's death, Romeo purchases poison from an apothecary. He vows to join her in death and rushes back to Verona with a heavy heart, unaware that his beloved is still alive. Romeo, his heart heavy with grief and despair, makes his way back to Verona with a single-minded determination. He knows that he cannot live without Juliet, that his life has lost all meaning without her by his side. He is consumed by a burning desire for vengeance, a need to punish those who have taken his love from him. As he approaches the city gates, he is met by a group of Capulet servants carrying Juliet's coffin. His heart shatters at the sight, and he falls to his knees, his body racked with sobs. He begs the servants to let him see Juliet one last time, to hold her in his arms before she is laid to rest. The servants, moved by the depth of Romeo's grief, allow him to approach the coffin. Romeo lifts the lid, his hands trembling as he gazes upon Juliet's still form. He brushes a stray lock of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her cold, pale skin. He whispers words of love and devotion, his tears falling like rain upon her lifeless body. In that moment, Romeo makes a decision. He will not live in a world without Juliet, a world where his love has been taken from him. He pulls the vial of poison from his pocket, uncorking it with shaking hands. He raises it to his lips, determined to join Juliet in the afterlife. As he drinks the deadly liquid, he feels a sense of peace wash over him. He knows that he is doing the right thing, that he is following his heart to the end. He lies down beside Juliet, his body growing cold and still as the poison takes effect. His final thoughts are of her, of the love they shared and the life they will never have. Little does Romeo know that Juliet is not truly dead, that she is merely sleeping, and as he takes his last breath, he is unaware of the tragedy that is about to unfold. The tomb. Romeo arrives at the Capulet tomb where Juliet lies. He finds her seemingly lifeless body and is overcome with grief. In his sorrowful farewell, he drinks the poison, just as Juliet begins to awaken from her slumber. As Romeo approaches the Capulet tomb, his heart is heavy with the weight of his grief. He knows that this is the last time he will ever see Juliet, that he is about to say goodbye to the love of his life forever. He steels himself for the pain that is to come, determined to face it with courage and dignity. The tomb is dark and silent, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and decay. As Romeo enters, he is struck by the stark contrast between the beauty of Juliet's face and the coldness of the crypt. He approaches her resting place, where her body lies in a white gown, surrounded by flowers that have wilted in mourning. Romeo kneels beside her, his heart breaking anew. He gently takes her hand, feeling the chill of death against his warm skin. "Oh, Juliet," he whispers, his voice choked with emotion. "What cruel fate has taken you from me?" He brushes his fingers against her cheek, wishing for a miracle to awaken her. In his grief, he pulls out the vial of poison, glistening ominously in the dim light. "I cannot bear to live in a world without you," he declares, tears streaming down his face. "I will join you in death." With that, he raises the vial to his lips and drinks deeply. Just as he finishes the last drop, Juliet stirs. The potion's effects begin to wear off, and she opens her eyes slowly, blinking against the darkness. Confused and disoriented, she sits up to find Romeo lying beside her, lifeless and pale. "Romeo," she cries out, panic gripping her heart as she shakes him gently. But there is no response, only silence fills the tomb. She feels a cold dread wash over her as she realizes what has happened. The awakening. Juliet's heart races as she looks around the tomb, desperately trying to piece together what has transpired. She remembers taking the potion and falling into a deep sleep, but cannot fathom why Romeo would be here with her now. "Romeo," she calls again, shaking him more forcefully. "Please wake up." But it is too late. Romeo's body lies still beside her, a tragic testament to their love's cruel fate. Overwhelmed by grief and despair, Juliet cradles Romeo's head in her lap. She feels the warmth of his skin fading away beneath her fingers. "Oh, my love," she sobs, "what have I done? I thought you would come for me. I thought we would escape together." In that moment of profound sorrow, Juliet remembers Friar Lawrence's words about love and sacrifice. She realizes that their love was not meant to end in tragedy, it was meant to transcend all boundaries. But now it seems that fate has conspired against them. With trembling hands, Juliet reaches for Romeo's dagger. "If I cannot have you in this life," she vows through tears, "then I will join you in the next." She presses the blade to her heart, ready to follow him into eternity. The aftermath. As Juliet plunges the dagger into her heart, she feels an overwhelming sense of peace wash over her. The pain of losing Romeo fades away as she embraces the love they shared, a love that defied all odds and brought them together even in death. Meanwhile, outside the tomb, chaos erupts as news of the tragedy spreads through Verona. The Capulets and Montagues are summoned to witness the aftermath of their feud, a scene that will haunt them forever. When Lord Capulet arrives at the tomb with Lady Capulet and Paris in tow, they are met with a sight that stops them in their tracks. Both Romeo and Juliet lie lifeless together on the cold stone floor. The air is thick with grief as they realize that their hatred has led to this heartbreaking conclusion. "Look at what our feud has wrought," Lord Capulet cries out in anguish. "We have lost our children to this senseless conflict." Lord Montague arrives moments later, his face pale as he takes in the scene before him. He falls to his knees beside Romeo's body, tears streaming down his cheeks as he mourns his son's tragic fate. "Oh my boy, what have we done?" he laments. A bitter lesson. The tragedy of Romeo and Juliet sends shockwaves through Verona. Their families are plunged into grief as they confront the consequences of their feud. The streets that once echoed with laughter now resonate with sorrow. The townspeople gather outside the tomb to pay their respects. Whispers of disbelief ripple through the crowd as they learn about the young lovers' fate. Many had heard tales of their romance, but never imagined it would end so tragically. In a somber gathering at the Capulet estate following the funeral rites, both families come together for what feels like an impossible task, finding common ground amidst their shared grief. They realize that their hatred has cost them dearly. They have lost not only their children, but also their humanity. As Lord Montague stands before both families gathered in mourning attire, he speaks with a heavy heart. "We have allowed our pride and anger to blind us to what truly matters: love and family." Lady Capulet nods solemnly beside him. "Our children loved each other despite our differences," she says softly. "Their love should serve as a reminder that we must put aside our animosity." A new beginning. In a moment filled with raw emotion and vulnerability, both families agree to lay down their arms and end their feud once and for all. They decide to honor Romeo and Juliet by building a memorial in their name, a place where future generations can come together to remember their story. The memorial is constructed in a beautiful garden filled with roses, symbolizing love, and surrounded by olive trees, representing peace. It becomes a sacred space where families from both sides can gather to reflect on what has transpired and vow never to let such hatred take root again. As time passes and seasons change, Verona begins its healing process slowly but surely. The memory of Romeo and Juliet serves as a guiding light for those who seek love instead of conflict. The legacy of love. The story of Romeo and Juliet spreads beyond Verona's walls. It becomes a symbol of true love that transcends all barriers. Poets write verses about their romance. Artists paint portraits capturing their essence. Storytellers recount their tale around firesides across Italy. Their love inspires countless others who face similar challenges. Those whose hearts are divided by family loyalty or societal expectations. People begin to see that love can conquer even the deepest divides if one is willing to fight for it. As generations pass down tales of these star-crossed lovers through songs sung at weddings or stories told at bedtime, each retelling adds new layers of meaning while keeping alive the spirit of hope embodied by Romeo and Juliet. Reflections on sacrifice. In quiet moments across Verona, people reflect on what it means to sacrifice for love. Stories emerge about others who have faced similar trials. Love stories marked by challenges but ultimately defined by devotion. Young couples visit the memorial dedicated to Romeo and Juliet. They leave flowers at its base, tokens of affection meant not only for those lost but also for themselves, to remind each other that true love requires courage above all else. One evening under a starlit sky at this very memorial, a young couple named Marco and Isabella stand hand in hand, contemplating how far they would go for one another if faced with insurmountable odds like those faced by Romeo and Juliet. "I would do anything for you," Marco declares earnestly, gazing into Isabella's eyes filled with determination, yet tinged with fear. The same emotions felt by those before them, who dared defy fate itself. The healing process. As time passes further still, Verona begins its healing process more profoundly than ever imagined possible after such tragedy struck its heart. The streets, once filled with animosity, now resonate instead with laughter among families united, rather than divided by bloodlines alone. Children grow up hearing tales about two lovers who dared defy societal norms, their stories serving as cautionary tales, reminding everyone involved about consequences stemming from hatred, while simultaneously inspiring hope amongst those yearning for acceptance, despite differences. Community events celebrating unity become commonplace throughout Verona. Festivals where Montagues dance alongside Capulets, celebrating life rather than mourning loss. A festival of love to honor their memory. A grand festival celebrating love takes place annually within Verona's streets. Families come together joyfully, sharing stories about romance while embracing each other regardless of past grievances. The festival features vibrant parades filled with music echoing throughout every corner. Dancers twirl around floats adorned beautifully, depicting scenes from Romeo and Juliet's lives, their story woven into every fabric displayed proudly before onlookers. At nightfall, fireworks light up skies above, illuminating faces filled with joy, their laughter ringing out like sweet melodies carried away gently upon warm breezes, reminding everyone present why they gather here today. To celebrate not just love lost, but also newfound connections forged through understanding. A lasting impact. Years later, children grow up hearing tales about Romeo and Juliet, stories filled with hope rather than hatred. Their legacy lives on, serving as testament, proving how powerful love can truly be when nurtured properly despite obstacles thrown along paths taken. Schools incorporate lessons surrounding themes found within these timeless tales, encouraging students reflect upon values such as empathy, compassion, understanding, rather than division among peers, based solely upon family names. As Verona thrives, embracing its rich history intertwined forevermore within hearts belonging each citizen. They recognize importance, maintaining bonds formed during darkest days, ensuring future generations never forget sacrifices made a long way towards achieving peace. Eternal love. As dusk falls over Verona each evening, lovers gather near tombs dedicated solely unto memory held close by those who loved deeply. Candles flicker softly, illuminating pathways, leading toward resting places where once two souls intertwined eternally, bound together forevermore. They light candles whispering promises into night sky, a promise that love will always prevail against adversity. Through tragedy comes understanding. Through loss comes unity. A lesson learned from two young hearts forever entwined within embrace, known only among true lovers willing brave anything necessary preserve bond forged amidst chaos surrounding them. And so, the tale continues. Living on through whispers, carried upon gentle winds, reminding all who hear it just how powerful true love can truly be when nurtured properly despite obstacles thrown along paths taken.